Got a big day here. Manual transmission test 4. Everybody got a pen, something to write with, and you got your test in front of you, right? Tapered roller bearings on the ends of shafts absorb radial and thrust forces. Okay, so what are radial and thrust forces? That is true, but what are radial and thrust forces? What's a radial force? When you think about radial, what do you think about?
Tires.
Well, yeah, that's radial tires, but that's basically, you're basically describing the tire. Radial forces are like whenever trying to go sideways. And when I mean sideways, we'll erase what I drew yesterday. Radial forces, when you're talking about a bearing, are like this. Radial forces are that bearing trying to move every which way. Okay. If you look at the bearing from the side, you got a shaft here, and these bearings right here they're talking about are those bearings kind of like wheel bearing. This is a thrust force here. Thrust forces go that way. So thrust forces go in and out. Radial forces go in the outer direction. So that is true. Number 1 is true. You should put a T on the line by number 1. T stands for true. F stands for false. Right? Okay. Gear position is determined by which gear is locked to the main shaft. Is that true? That is true. If anybody's, how many of you guys have had carnal knowledge of a manual transmission? You have. Daniel has. Webb has. Hargis started on that one and bailed out on me. And actually, he just didn't get through because he got sidetracked. But I will take what you got is we talked about that before. The ones of you that don't know, the shaft coming in the front. I'm gonna do this real quick. Okay. There's a bearing. There's a gear. Right. There's another gear that matches that one, and this is like 2 Christmas trees. This one gets bigger as it goes. That one gets smaller as it goes. All right. This shaft and the one that's going out in the back, that's got all the gears, whirling on it, they're 2 different shafts. So whichever one of these gears that you lock to that main shaft are going to decide how it's going to flow. So when you lock that gear to the main shaft, you're basically in what gear?
First.
No.
Third.
George, help him. Or you can get your test to sit in here, and then you can help him when you're done.
Right.
Yeah, grab your test to sit in because you're in manual transmission anyway. All right, see that? Right here, this right here is when you're locked. When they're 2 locked together, what are they? What gear are you in? When the output and the input are locked together, what gear is it? This is a transmission like in your truck.
That's only 2 gears?
No, I'm only drawing 2 gears.
Oh.
But on every transmission you see, when you lock that one to that one, you're in direct 1-to-1, like fourth. If it's a third, if it's a 3-speed, you know what I'm saying? Now if it's an overdrive's back at the back. But fourth, the one where you're 1-to-1, on the old column shift 3-speed, this was third. On a 4-speed, this is fourth. So it's a 1-to-1 ratio all the way back. When you go to this one back here, that's third. And as the gears go bigger here and smaller here, you see, that one there is first, that's second, that's third, that's fourth, and then overdrive will be back here on the back, outside of the bearing housing. Got me? Okay, so that's fourth. I mean, whenever you start out, you're going to go click, boom. You're going to have this right here is going to be going here, going all the way down there, going to go up here and out the back. So you basically got a little tiny gear turning a big gear, right? Got me? All right, you got a little tiny gear turning a big gear. That's a real low speed. A lot of engine turns, but not very many turns to the right yet. Then when you go here, you got a few less turns and a few more turns here. And then when you go here, you got a few less here and a few more here. When you go there, you think nothing is, this is freewheeling down here in fourth. Like on Willie's, when he goes through all of his gears and he gets to fourth, he's got a whine in every gear except fourth. When you got that bad boy in fourth gear, you ain't hearing nothing. But when you're going through all of it, you hit fourth, and you're in fifth, it's whining again. That's because you got issues with this and probably those, he said that transmission ran out of oil and got hot enough where it was smoking. Is that right?
Right.
So you probably have mismatched these gears here, and you got a bad bearing there.
Now it'll go in the second, but the only time it go in the second is when you get the RPMs over really high. Yeah. But as far as first, third, and fourth, and fifth goes in just as easy as you please.
Yeah, so you got another transmission coming, don't you?
Well, I want to get another one, yeah.
Yeah, that's how you probably, you can
drive it.
You can drive it for a while, just drive it. What's it going to hurt? You know what I mean?
Anything, right?
Yeah, not really. As long as that clutch is working, you're good to go. You can put it in a gear that'll go. You need to, All right. And it's saving you some gas, too, isn't it?
Yeah, I want to put gas in it One time this week.
Ain't that-
And I was burning $120 every week.
All right, cool. All right, I was burning $50 every 3 days when I was driving my truck. Okay, gear, that number 2 is actually true. Number 1's true. Number 2 is true. Manual transmission test 4, George. Adjustments to the shift linkage may be made with the transmission in low gear or neutral. Adjustments to the shift linkage may be made. No, we're not going to do that. That's going to be a falsie. Right? Synchronizer rings may have grooves or friction material on the inside circumference. All right, you know what that's about, right? That synchronizer, that brass blocker ring, is basically, it's a cone-shaped inside, and it locks onto a cone-shaped gear, and it's going to force that cone-shaped gear that it's going against. You're shoving it against the cone-shaped gear to pick up speed or reduce speed, whatever needs to happen, so that synchronizer sleeve can click over it. If the teeth are knocked off of that little synchronizer ring, like you're talking about, or if it's broke so that it can't stop it, when you put it in that gear, it's going to go. You're going to grind it every time. Every time you grind it, you knock a little metal off. Good thing. You ever grind gears? Everybody ever do that? Do you like the way that feels when you grind gears? They don't, okay. Makes you sick, don't it? Side gear bearing preload is measured with an inch-pound torque wrench and a tool that fits over the pinion shaft. Got it? George, do you know anything about that? Come on, George. Did you yesterday have a torque wrench and you were seeing how much turn-in torque that rear end had? That's what I'm talking about here. Got it? Except you were actually measuring pinion gear preload, right, when you did that. George got that big old differential tore apart over there, and he's actually going through that worksheet on that. That's probably what you need to do when you get through here to go finish that up, because you're a pretty good ways into that job. Okay, now, although they're not very economical, mechanical or cable, and incidentally, that sheet he's doing is a driveline sheet. It's not a manual transmission sheet, and that's one that you guys will be working with next time around. What you got? Question?
4 and 5 are true, right?
Yeah.
That was the question.
Oh, whether 4 and 5 were true or not?
Yeah.
Yeah, both of those are true. All right, you got it? All right, that was it. You done? All right, so although they're not very economical, mechanical or cable linkages are used in most manual transaxles because they are reliable.
True.
That's false.
Okay.
Yeah.
There it goes.
Yep. You crashed and burned on that one. Yeah. Whenever you get where you're bold enough to go ahead and try to answer a true-false question, it always goes down in flames, don't you? All right. Well, you know, that's like you put the Listerine in there and make the lights turn green. Okay, 7. Gears and gear sets on manual transaxles are similar to rear-wheel drive manual synchro mesh transmissions.
False.
Rear-wheel drive manual synchro transaxle meaning what?
Up front, which is normally front-wheel drive.
Yep, that's number 7. That is true. If you look, there's one right over there. See that transaxle right over there?
Yep.
That little rascal. All right, we're going there. Now let's jump on down here. All transaxle models has the same disassembly procedure.
False.
That's a no-brainer. You know that they're all going to be all different. Come on. When assembling a transaxle, rotate the gears at least 1 full revolution prior to measuring backlash. This ensures the gears are fully seated.
True.
That is true. And finally, number 10 on the true falsies, we got, for proper transaxle maintenance, manufacturers recommend changing the lubricant only if it becomes contaminated, and that is true. You don't need to change your manual transmission lubricant unless, so how would it not become contaminated?
Metal shavings.
Well, you obviously got to go in there and work on them, but I mean, just the oil becoming contaminated, how would that happen? Taylor, have you and Derek ever gone four-wheeling? You ever gone four-wheeling? What happens then is you're up into the water is above the transaxle, water goes in the vent, and you wind up with water in the transmission, right? So if you got water in the transmission, that's contaminated, isn't it? You need to change it then. Differential can do that too if if enough water goes in the vent. The vent usually will be made so that it's hard for water to go in there. You might even seen the one that I did that YouTube video on that everybody wanted to watch. The vent's on top of the axle tube, and it actually has a hose on it it's shaped like a question mark. And so if any water gets on there, it's really hard for it to work its way through there and get in the transmission, in the rear end. But every closed gearbox, I don't care if it's an automatic transmission, a manual transmission, or anything like that, all of those.
What time are you going to be through in here?
In here probably in about probably 20 minutes.
I had a couple items on the truck that I wanted you to look at.
Sure,
but
absolutely.
I can't go downtown and do my mail with them in the truck. I can wait 20 minutes. That's
Sure,
fine.
okay, all right.
That's fine.
All right, so basically, any closed gearbox is going to have a vent. Because as it heats up and, cools off, you're going to have air coming and going. So if it doesn't have a vent, it's going to blow the seals. If the vent's clogged up, it's going to blow the seals. Got me? Now, something else I want to say before I forget it, and I'm liable to forget it if I don't say it right now. You know the little transaxle that's out there on that Toyota engine? I may have mentioned this to you the other day, but you're gonna, let's say you're wanting to check and make sure that everything's okay. You're doing somebody says check all my fluids. I want to make sure I'm not going to have any problems with my Toyota Camry or my Corolla, right? Okay, so you go out there, and this is like a 98 model Corolla, and you pull the dipstick, and you check the power steering, and you check the brake fluid, and you are looking at all this, and you say, okay, everything's good. Okay, and so they head out of town, and about the time they get 20 or 30 miles out of town, the transmission locks up, and the car slides over to the side of the road. Now, what did you do wrong?
Probably didn't warm it.
There was something you didn't check that most people never, ever, ever think about checking on a Toyota Camry or a Toyota Corolla. And every now and then, you'll see that thing, your dipstick will show that you're full. You need to know this, don't you, George?
The cable wasn't connected to the...
No cable. You didn't do anything wrong, except for you forgot to check the differential. Because the differential on those is a separate gearbox from the rest of the transmission. And it has got a little plug you take out. I can show it to you on that little motor on the stand out there. Take that plug out, stick your finger in there, make sure it's full of oil. If those CV axle seals that snap into that final drive are leaking, it will empty that sucker of oil a little at the time until there's nothing in it. See, if you see an oil leak there, you ever seen oil leaks there? Where those CV axles snap into there? And so anyway, and Alan Cobb had a 97 model that he brought in here, and we were looking at it. And so we raised it up, and we're looking under there. And he is not, the reason he pulled it in, he noticed a little bit of oil on the pavement. So we got under there, and the final drive on that transaxle was dripping out. And it actually, we pulled that thing out, and he was almost out of oil in that thing. You see, and it's real easy to forget to check that when you're working on a Toyota Camry. You got me? Scary as all get out.
Isn't that silica out there?
Yeah.
Yeah, now Joe and yeah, probably. Well, Celica probably got that too, because it's going to have like a Toyota Corolla driveline, I think. But anyway, that's that one that Joe and Dan's little Corolla did that. They were about halfway around the circle, all of a sudden, brrr, they were beside the road, and it just locked up solid. We had to put a transaxle in it. I've still got that transaxle over there, the one we pulled out of it. Yeah. All right, but anyway, you remember that, George, and I will show you where that thing is. When you're checking it, you need to go over here, and you can amaze your friends over there if you ask them this. Have you checked the differential? And some of those yo-yos will not know it was even there. You know what I mean? You never see them check it, do you? That's it. It's going to be a big liability time. You got to buy a transmission. All right. So if that's somebody, this is the thing about it is, if somebody tells you to check their vehicle over and you miss that, and it locks up, you think they might be able to come and talk ugly to you because you forgot to check it. It's real easy. The guy at Salvage Yard over there, he says when he sells one of those, he tells the people he's selling the transaxle to, always check this. And they ignore him, and he says, and sometimes they have trouble because of that, right? Okay, we're almost done here. 2 advantages of using a transaxle rather than a transmission are what? Can you read those? How about a good vehicle balance and efficient design for better space utilization? That sounds good to me. Got some big words in there, but most of you guys are smart enough to know what those words mean. Okay, now the stuff that's not an advantage, there's 3 of them. One of them that's not an advantage is easy accessibility for repairs and improved front tire wear. You're going to have front tire wear that's a little worse on those because they're digging out. As a matter of fact, my wife, whenever she drove that little red Tempo that we're sitting out there right now, you know how you stop on the paint stripe across the road, and when you go to take off, it goes because it's slickery. She would do that, and she wore the right front tire out on that car, and then I rotated him. She wore the other right tire. So when she goes to the tire place, both the right tires are slam out, and the left ones are, and he was scratching his head, saying, "How'd this happen?" So which of the following is not suggested when attempting to identify the source of manual transaxle and drivetrain noise? What do you about that?
A.
Actually, D, believe it or not.
The technician should not be driving.
Yeah, you know why? You know why? Listen to this, guys. You're hunting for a noise. You better have the customer show you the noise they're hunting for.
Then
Because what'll happen is if they're not, you'll spend 2.5 hours working on something that bothers you, and they'll say, I wasn't talking about that noise. I didn't even want that fixed. I was talking about this other noise, and you burned a couple of hours that I don't want to pay you for because they were talking about a noise that you didn't even notice. Particularly if it's a crummy car that's got lots of noises. You know, you'll hear a noise and say, man, that's horrible. That sounds like it's going to come all to pieces. Well, that's the one you sell them. The one they're talking about, I'm hearing that little squeaking, knocking noise up on the left front. Well, you worked on a rattling, bumping noise on the right front. That's not what I was talking about. I'm still hearing the noise I wanted fixed. You see why you need to have the customer riding if you're checking for a noise? Don't assume anything. If you assume you're checking the right noise, have you seen this, George? You have, haven't you? Oh, come on now. You've been at the Toyota place for how long?
Yeah, I'm driving.
Okay, right now. All right. So always make doggone sure the technician is sitting in the car and the customer is saying, that's the noise I'm talking about. At the Volkswagen place one day, we had a guy come over here, the noise was intermittent, and he come over with a tape recorder. He had recorded it with a little cassette recorder. And he wanted, how can you do with that? You know what I mean? So anyway, we got a chassis area out there that was got little microphones, and you can put 5 or 6 microphones in various places under the car, and then you click from one microphone to the other, and the one that's really noisy is the one that you know is where your problem is. A customer complains that his or her car is stuck in gear. You identify all of the following as possible causes except A, a damaged synchronizer, B, a worn internal shifter mechanism, C, a damaged external shifter mechanism, or D, an obstruction of the case vent tube. D, you're not, the case vent's not going to make it. Yes, sir? Oh, I see you were throwing up your thumb there. While inspecting the transaxle and clutch housing cases during assembly, a service technician notices what appears to be a crack in the transaxle case and some nicks and burrs on mating surfaces. Which of the following statements is incorrect? Now this is a hallmark of a ASE question, guys. Nicks and burrs are common in imperfections and will not interfere with normal functioning. Is that okay? Nicks and burrs should be removed with a fine stone or a file. Alloy casting imperfections may appear to be cracks, or case integrity should be checked using a dye penetrant solution. So only one of those is incorrect, and that one would be A. Nicks and burrs are not common imperfections. Okay, and finally, number 15, we got 2 more questions. When the transmission is in 4th gear, how are the gears engaged? What about it? Anybody know? 3rd gear is unlocked, and 4th gear is locked to the main shaft. 3rd gear is unlocked. Yeah, and so that's the only right way to answer that question. And number 16, to check transaxle lubricant level, start by doing what?
Checking air pressure.
Look at that. Hey, Webb, do you know that? Huh? Wait a minute. Huh? Hey, yeah, A's the one that y'all were fighting with. You got that sensor in it. No, they're okay. That's good. Got the wires and the cable plugged into it, right? All right. Smooth. How's that guy? Everybody, do you know stuff? Now you're going to be able to cover all this over there? Remember everything that I said? He can pull it up on YouTube. He needs to know this stuff, doesn't he? This is good stuff, isn't it? Right. All right, then. And y'all walk out there. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about on the Toyota, huh? This right here is underneath the car. You see that plug right there?
Yeah.
When you take that little plug right there out, if I can do that, take that plug air out, and you're going to find that you're going to be checking the oil behind that. This is a different chamber, and it even has a different vent than the rest of the transaxle. So if this goes out, see how these CV axle shafts are in there? They're coming out of there, and those CV axle shafts, if they start leaking, this will go empty, and when this goes empty enough, it gets hot, and it just seizes up, and your car slides over to the side of the road, see? And that's a Toyota Corolla or Camry, you know, 90s, early 00s, that kind of thing. So just remember that when you're checking the fluids and doing an oil prep, you know, look for these seals to be leaking. If they're not leaking, you're probably okay, but I'd still get a 17 millimeter, screw that out of there, stick your finger in there and see if there's oil. It's supposed to be right at the base of that hole. If not, you need to tell them about it.